My name is Hannah Brooks. I'm 31 years old, and until 2 years ago, I lived in a tiny apartment in Portland, Oregon, working 12-hour nursing shifts and convincing myself that exhaustion was the same thing as happiness. It wasn't. But back then, I believed if I just worked hard enough, loved hard enough, sacrificed enough, eventually my family would finally see me the way they saw my younger sister Claire. Golden. Perfect. Worth choosing. And honestly, I spent most of my life trying to earn a love that was given to her freely. I didn't realize how damaging that was until the night I stood alone in the arrivals terminal at Seattle-Tacoma Airport, holding flowers in one hand and my phone in the other, while reading a text message that shattered something inside me forever. We decided to stay with Claire instead. Hope you understand. That was it. After 4 years apart, after spending nearly $6,000 flying my parents across the country, after planning every detail for months, they chose her. Again. And the worst part? That wasn't even the moment that destroyed me. No. What happened 3 days later, what I accidentally overheard inside my sister's kitchen, still makes my stomach turn when I think about it, because that was the moment I realized my family never saw me as a daughter, just a backup plan, a wallet, a convenient disappointment they could use whenever Claire messed up her life again. But they forgot something important. People who spend years being ignored become very good at surviving alone. And when those people finally stop begging for love, they become dangerous. It's strange looking back now, because if you met me then, you probably would have thought I had everything together. I had just accepted a senior administrative role at a private medical company in Seattle. The salary was better than anything I'd ever earned before. I had a beautiful downtown condo with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. I drove a decent car. I wore clean blazers and smiled politely during meetings. But behind all of that, I was lonely. The kind of lonely that sits quietly beside you at night. The kind that makes achievements feel empty because nobody genuinely celebrates them with you, especially not family. My father, Richard Brooks, was a retired contractor with strong opinions and a stronger ego. My mother, Diane, spent most of her life revolving around Claire like the moon around the earth. Claire was 28, beautiful, charming, impulsive, and somehow always in crisis. Every year it was something new: a failed relationship, a business idea, credit card debt, a dramatic breakup, a toxic boss, a sudden emergency, and every single time, my parents rushed to rescue her. Meanwhile, I became the reliable daughter, the stable one, the responsible one, which sounds nice until you realize responsible often means the child we ignore because we assume she'll survive it. And I did survive it, for years, even after moving away, even after spending holidays alone, even after crying in my car outside hospital parking lots because I realized nobody ever called to ask how I was doing. Still, I kept trying, because some stupid part of me believed one perfect moment could finally fix everything. That's why I planned the trip. My parents had never visited Seattle, not once. 4 years, 4 birthdays, 4 Christmases, 4 years of excuses. Your father's back hurts. Flights are expensive. Claire needs us right now. Always Claire. But this time, I decided I'd make it impossible for them to say no. I bought first-class tickets. I booked a beautiful waterfront hotel suite. I reserved dinner cruises, museum passes, a private wine tour, everything. I wanted them to finally feel proud of me. And maybe I wanted proof that I mattered too. When my mother called after receiving the tickets, she actually sounded emotional. "Oh, Hannah, this is so generous." I smiled while standing in my kitchen. "You deserve a vacation." Well, Claire's been stressed lately too. There it was, even then. I remember laughing awkwardly. "Mom, this trip is for you and Dad." "Of course, sweetheart. I just meant maybe Claire could join us for one dinner." One dinner. That should have been my warning. But I ignored it, because hope makes intelligent people stupid sometimes. For the next month, I planned everything around them. I rearranged work meetings, cleaned my condo obsessively, filled the guest room with fresh towels and snacks. I even stocked my dad's favorite bourbon. And embarrassingly, I practiced conversations in my head. Normal family conversations, the kind other people probably take for granted. I imagined my mother hugging me and saying she missed me. I imagined my father looking around my condo with pride. I imagined us laughing at dinner. I imagined finally feeling chosen. God, I was naive. The day of their flight, I barely slept. I woke up at 5 in the morning, curled my hair, changed outfits 3 times, and drove to the airport an hour early. That should tell you everything about how badly I wanted this. The arrivals board flashed their flight number. My heart pounded. Passengers slowly poured through the terminal doors. Families reunited everywhere around me. Children running into parents' arms, couples kissing, people crying happy tears. And then my phone buzzed. I smiled instantly, until I read the message. Hannah, don't be upset. Claire surprised us by driving up to Seattle. We're staying with her for a few days first. She already booked things for us. We'll see you soon. I just stared at the screen. At first, my brain genuinely couldn't process it. I reread the message 4 times. Then I called my mother immediately, straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. Then Claire answered, cheerful, like nothing was wrong. Hey, sis! My chest tightened. What do you mean they're staying with you? Oh, come on, don't make this dramatic. Dramatic. I laughed quietly because I was seconds away from crying in public. I paid for this trip. And they appreciate it. Claire. They just thought it'd be easier staying with family instead of a hotel. You mean with you? Silence. Then she sighed dramatically. You know, Hannah, not everything has to become a competition. That sentence lit something dark inside me. Because my entire life had been one endless competition I never agreed to enter. And somehow, I was always the selfish one for noticing it. I whispered. I stood in this airport for an hour waiting for them. Claire's voice softened slightly. Look, Mom said you'd react like this. That hurt more than anything, because it meant they discussed me beforehand, prepared for my disappointment, planned around it. I ended the call before she could hear me crying. Then I just stood there, in the middle of the airport, holding flowers like an idiot, watching strangers reunite with people who actually wanted to see them. And something inside me cracked quietly. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like glass finally giving up under pressure. I drove home in silence. The flowers sat in the passenger seat beside me like evidence of humiliation. When I got back to my condo, I noticed the welcome banner I'd hung near the kitchen. Welcome to Seattle, Mom and Dad. I stared at it for a long time before ripping it down. Then I cried harder than I had in years. Not because they chose Claire, but because deep down, I realized they always would. And somehow, at 31 years old, I was still begging to be loved by people who had already made their choice. But I had no idea. The worst betrayal was still waiting for me. Because 2 days later, my mother would ask me for something that changed everything between us forever. And when I discovered the truth behind why they really came to Seattle, I stopped being the good daughter. For good. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the airport over and over again in my mind like a broken film. The moment my phone lit up. The moment my mother didn't answer. Claire's voice. Calm. Almost entertained. Don't make this dramatic. That line kept echoing in my head. Because what was I supposed to be then? Emotionless? Grateful? Smiling while I stood alone holding flowers for people who chose someone else? At around 2:17 a.m., my phone finally rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something inside me, maybe pride, maybe pain, maybe stupidity, made me answer. Hello? A pause, then my mother's voice, soft, careful, like she was walking on glass. Hannah, sweetheart, are you awake? I sat up instantly. Where are you? A small nervous laugh came through the phone. Oh, we're at Claire's place. It's just... A bit hectic here. Hectic. That word felt so small for what I was feeling. I closed my eyes. You humiliated me today. Silence. Not denial, not confusion. Silence. That told me everything. Then she sighed. Please don't say it like that. Nobody humiliated you. We just changed plans. Changed plans. Like I was a hotel booking they could cancel. I pressed my hand to my forehead. Mom, I spent thousands. I planned everything. I waited at the airport like an idiot. Another pause. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. Well, Claire said she really needed us. That was it. No apology. No recognition. Just Claire. Always Claire. I stood up and started pacing my living room. So I don't need you? Hannah, that's not what I meant. But it was exactly what she meant. I could hear dishes clinking in the background. Laughter. Claire's voice faintly in the distance. They were there. Together. Without me. While I was alone in my apartment trying not to break down completely. My voice cracked. Do you even realize what you did? A long breath from my mother. Honey, you're very independent. You always have been. Claire. She struggles more emotionally. I froze. There it was. The excuse I had heard my entire life. Claire struggles. Claire needs. Claire is fragile. And I was what? Disposable? I laughed quietly. You mean I don't matter as much? No, that's not fair. But she didn't deny it. That silence again. The kind that answers everything without saying a word. I ended the call before I said something I couldn't take back. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened my childhood photo album. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted proof I was imagining things. Maybe I wanted to convince myself I wasn't the overlooked one. But page after page, it was always the same pattern. Claire at center stage. Claire blowing candles. Claire hugging Mom. Claire opening gifts. And me, standing slightly behind, half-cropped, half-smiling. Always there, but never fully seen. My chest tightened, and I whispered to the empty room. When did I become the background character in my own family? The next morning I forced myself to go to work, because that's what I always did. When life hurt, I worked. When I was ignored, I worked harder. When I felt invisible, I became more useful. But that day, something was different. I couldn't focus. Not even slightly. I kept checking my phone every few minutes, waiting for an apology that didn't come, waiting for someone to realize what they did. But instead, I got a message from Claire. And I wish I could say I didn't open it. But I did. Hey, can you transfer a little money to Mom? She's stressed about some expenses here. You know how she gets when she travels. I stared at the message for a long time. My fingers went cold. Not because of the request, but because of how casual it was. Like I was a backup ATM. Like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't stood alone at an airport yesterday watching my entire family choose her. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I called my father. He picked up after 2 rings. Yeah? No greeting. No warmth. Just that tone he always used when he was already tired of the conversation before it began. Did you know they weren't coming to me? A pause. Then, your mother explained it. That's all he said. I blinked. That's it? Hannah, it's not a big deal. We're here now. I laughed. A sharp, broken sound. You're not here for me. You're there for Claire. Silence again. Then his voice hardened slightly. You always make everything about yourself. That sentence hit harder than anything else. Because I wasn't making it about myself. I was finally noticing I didn't exist in it at all. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from anger. from realization. Because in that moment, something shifted. I wasn't sad anymore. Sadness is soft. Sadness cries. Sadness hopes. What I felt now was different. It was quiet, cold, clear. Like waking up after a long dream and realizing none of it was real. That night, I didn't call them. I didn't text them. I didn't try to fix anything. Instead, I sat in my kitchen with a glass of water I didn't drink and stared at my reflection in the dark window. And I made a decision I didn't fully understand yet, but it felt final. If I was invisible to them, then I would stop trying to be seen. And the next morning, when Claire sent another message asking for help with a few bills, I did something I had never done before. I didn't reply. Not immediately. Not politely. Not gently. I just looked at the screen and let the silence answer for me. What I didn't know yet was that silence was going to change everything. Because Claire wasn't just asking for money, she was building something behind my back. And I was about to find out exactly how deep the betrayal went. But the truth, the real truth, was still waiting to be uncovered in the most unexpected way possible. And when it finally came out, I wouldn't just lose my family. I would finally understand why they never saw me at all. I didn't reply to Claire's message for 2 full days. That might not sound like much, but in my world, it was revolutionary. Because for years, I had been the one who always responded first, always fixed things first, always apologized first, even when I wasn't wrong. But this time, I stayed quiet. And strangely, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like control. On the 3rd day, my father called again. I almost didn't answer, but I did. "Yeah?" I said, using his exact tone from before. A pause on the line, then his voice, slightly impatient. "Your mother said you're not responding to Claire." I leaned back in my chair. "So?" Another pause. I could almost hear him breathing heavier, like I was being difficult on purpose. "Hannah, she's your sister." That word again. Sister. Like it explained everything. Like it excused everything. I stood up and walked to the window. "Is that why she gets everything?" Silence. Not denial. Not correction. Just silence. That silence was becoming a pattern now. And I was starting to understand something painful. My family didn't argue with me because they didn't see my perspective as valid enough to even debate. I wasn't wrong to them. I was irrelevant. Finally, my father spoke again. "Claire is going through a rough time. You know that." I laughed softly. "Dad, she's been going through a rough time for 10 years. That landed differently. I could hear it. Because this time, he didn't respond immediately. Instead, I heard something unexpected in his voice. Annoyance. Not at Claire. At me. "You don't understand family responsibility," he said. And that was it. That was the moment something inside me shifted again. Family responsibility. Because apparently mine was to sacrifice, and theirs was to decide I never did enough. I ended the call. But this time, I didn't feel broken afterward. I felt awake. Like I had finally stepped outside a story I was never meant to question. The next morning, something strange happened. I received an email. Not from Claire, not from my parents, but from a bank. Subject line, Joint Account Activity Notice. I froze. I didn't even remember opening a joint account. But then I saw it. A small account my father had insisted I help set up for family savings years ago. I barely used it. Neither did they. Or so I thought. I clicked, and my stomach tightened instantly. Multiple withdrawals, large ones, recent ones, all in the last few weeks. My pulse spiked. I called the bank immediately. After verifying my identity, the representative said something that made my throat go dry. "Yes, Miss Brooks. There have been several authorized transactions initiated from the other account holder." Other account holder. My father. I gripped my desk. "How much?" A pause. Then the number. I had to sit down. Because it wasn't small. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't emergency help. It was deliberate, strategic, controlled. I hung up without even thanking them. My hands were shaking now. Not from sadness. From something sharper. Clarity. Because suddenly, Claire's message made sense. Can you transfer a little money? A little money. While they were quietly draining an account I had contributed to for years. I opened my laptop immediately and checked every financial record I had access to. And what I found made my chest feel hollow. My parents hadn't just been staying with Claire. They had been funding her. For months. Maybe longer. Rent payments. Credit card repayments. Utility bills. And every time she struggled, the pattern was the same. Money came from somewhere, but never directly from them. It came from shared accounts, from indirect transfers, from me. And I had never noticed. Because I trusted them. Because I believed family meant transparency. But this wasn't family. This was coordination. I sat there for a long time, staring at numbers that suddenly felt like evidence, not mistakes, not misunderstandings, evidence. My phone buzzed again. Claire. Of course. Hey, Mom said you called the bank? Everything okay? That casual tone again, like nothing mattered, like she wasn't sitting in the middle of the entire situation. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my mother. She answered quickly this time. Too quickly. Hannah. Why is money being moved from my account? I interrupted. Silence. Immediate. Heavy. Then her voice softened. Oh, you saw that? Not, what are you talking about? Not confusion. She knew. I closed my eyes. So it's true. A long pause. Then she said something I will never forget. Hannah, it's complicated. Complicated. That word again. The universal excuse for betrayal. I whispered, You used my money. No, it's not like that. Then explain it. Silence. And then, finally, Claire needed help. We were going to fix it later. Something inside me snapped quietly. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just cleanly. Like a thread breaking. You stole from me. Hannah, don't say that. But I already had. Because once you say the truth out loud, you can't unhear it anymore. I ended the call. And this time, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't shake. I just sat there in silence, watching my reflection in my laptop screen. As I realized something terrifying, this wasn't just favoritism. This wasn't just emotional neglect. This was planned. And I was never meant to be included in it. But the worst part? I still didn't know the full story. Because what I had discovered was only the beginning. And Claire? She was about to make a mistake that would finally expose everything. And this time, I wouldn't stay silent. After that conversation with my mother, something inside me stopped reacting the way it used to. Normally, I would have spent hours trying to fix it, explaining myself, calming things down, blaming myself for misunderstanding. But this time, I didn't. I just sat there in silence. And for the first time in my life, silence didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like distance, safe distance, like I was finally stepping back from a fire that had been burning me slowly for years. The next morning, Claire called me. I didn't want to pick up. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, especially when you already know something is wrong. So I answered. Her voice came instantly, bright and casual, like nothing in the world was falling apart. Hey, sis. I stayed silent. She laughed lightly. Okay, wow, still giving me the silent treatment? I walked to the kitchen and poured myself coffee. What do you want, Claire? A small pause. Then her tone softened slightly, like she was playing the victim now. Mom told me you got upset about the bank thing. I froze for half a second. So it wasn't just my mother. Everyone knew. Everyone had already discussed me. And I was the last one to be informed in my own life. I took a slow breath. I didn't get upset, I said. I found out you've been taking money. Claire sighed dramatically. Oh my God, here we go again. That sentence. Here we go again. Like I was predictable. Like my reaction to being financially betrayed was just another one of my moods. I set the coffee down. Explain it then. She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Just enough. Then she spoke again, slower now. It's not what you think. Mom and Dad were helping me temporarily. Temporarily, I repeated. Yes. How long is temporarily, Claire? Silence. That silence again. The same one I was hearing from everyone. Finally, she said, You don't understand pressure. You've always been stable. Not all of us have that luxury. Luxury? I almost laughed. Because stability wasn't a luxury. It was something I built by being ignored. I leaned against the counter. So let me get this straight, I said quietly. You take money from my accounts and call it help? It's family money, she said quickly. That word again. Family. Used like a shield. Used like permission. I closed my eyes. No, I said. It's not. A pause. Then her tone changed. Less soft now. More irritated. You're really going to do this? Over money? Over money. As if it was small. As if it wasn't months of planning, transferring, hiding. As if I hadn't just been reduced to a funding source for their real daughter. I walked to the window. I think you should stop contacting me. That sentence landed differently. Even she didn't respond immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its casual tone completely. You're going to regret acting like this. There it was. Not guilt, not explanation, a warning. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Is that a threat? I asked calmly. A short laugh. No, it's reality. Then she hung up. Just like that. No resolution. No apology. Only pressure building behind the scenes. I stood there holding my phone for a long time after the call ended. And for the first time, I felt something unfamiliar growing inside me. Not anger, not sadness, awareness. Because Claire didn't sound afraid. She sounded confident. Too confident. Like someone who believed she still controlled the situation. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I started digging. Bank statements, old emails, shared documents, anything tied to that joint account. At first, it looked like small inconsistencies, but the more I looked, the more patterns appeared. Transfers were always made, right after Claire's emergencies, right before my parents visited her, and always just under the threshold that would trigger instant alerts. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't chaos. This was coordination. And then I found something that made my stomach drop. A legal document. Signed. Not recently. Years ago. A family financial assistance authorization. My name was on it. But I didn't remember signing it. I zoomed in. And then I saw it. The signature. It looked like mine. But it wasn't. Close. But slightly off. My breath slowed. Someone had copied it. And the document gave access. Full access. To shared financial handling. My hands went cold. Because now this wasn't just betrayal. This was something deeper. Something deliberate. Something planned. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, feeling like the room had suddenly gone too quiet. And then my phone rang again. My father. I almost didn't answer. But I did. His voice was different this time. Not annoyed, not dismissive. Careful. Hannah, we need to talk. I didn't say anything. He continued. Your mother told me you've been looking into things. I swallowed slowly. So it's true. I said. A long pause. Then he exhaled. Hannah, you're overreacting. That sentence again. Overreacting. I stood up slowly. I found forged documents. Silence. Longer this time. He didn't deny it immediately. And that was all I needed. Finally, his voice came back lower. It wasn't meant like that. My grip tightened on the phone. What does that even mean? Another pause. Then he said something I will never forget. Claire was going to lose everything if we didn't help her. And in that moment, everything clicked. Not just the money, not just the lies, but the entire structure of my family. Because suddenly I understood something horrifyingly simple. I wasn't competing with Claire. I was funding her survival, and they had decided that was acceptable, as long as I stayed quiet. But I wasn't quiet anymore. I looked out the window at the city lights of Seattle, calm, beautiful, unaware of the storm building inside my life. My voice was steady when I spoke. Dad, I think you made a mistake. He sighed. Hannah. But I interrupted him. No, I said quietly. You made a decision. Silence again. Then I added, and now I'm going to make one too. I hung up before he could respond. And for the first time since everything started, I wasn't wondering how to fix things. I was wondering how far they were willing to go. Because now I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't going to end with an apology. It was going to end with the truth coming out. And when it did, someone was going to lose everything they built on my silence. The morning after I hung up on my father, my phone didn't stop ringing. But I didn't answer. Not once. It felt strange at first, like ignoring gravity, like I was supposed to fall apart the moment I stopped responding. But I didn't. Instead, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went to work. I sat in meetings. I replied to emails. I smiled when people spoke to me. And for the first time in years, I didn't carry my family's chaos inside my head like it was my full-time job. But under the surface, something was shifting. Quietly. Constantly. Like pressure building behind glass. At 11:43 a.m., Claire texted again. Mom is really upset. Can you please just talk to them? I stared at the message for a long time. Not because I was confused, but because I finally understood the pattern. I wasn't being asked to resolve problems. I was being asked to absorb them. I didn't reply. 2 minutes later, another message came. You're making this worse than it needs to be. That one made me pause. Because in their world, silence from me wasn't peaceful. It was rebellion. And rebellion was not something they knew how to handle. Around noon, my office phone rang. My assistant told me there was a call from my mother. I stared at the ringing line for a few seconds. Then I picked up. Her voice came quickly, almost relieved. Hannah, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. I leaned back in my chair. I've been busy. A pause. Then she spoke softly. This situation with Claire is getting out of hand. I almost laughed. Out of hand. Like it was a spilled glass of water. Like it wasn't years of imbalance finally becoming visible. I stayed quiet. She continued. She told us you were going to freeze the accounts. That made me sit up slightly. I didn't say that, I replied. Well, she's very stressed. Of course she is. Always the center of stress. Always the reason everything bends around her. I looked out my office window. Downtown Seattle looked normal. People walking, cars moving, life continuing like nothing was wrong. And here I was, in the middle of something no one else could see. I'm not freezing anything, I said calmly. A sigh of relief from her side. Oh, good. I knew you wouldn't be so extreme. Extreme. That word again. Funny how standing up for yourself always sounds extreme to people who benefit from your silence. But then her tone changed. more careful now. There is something else we need to discuss. I felt it immediately. That shift. The one that meant the conversation was about to become important. What is it? I asked. A pause. Then she said, Claire is thinking of moving back home for a while, but she'll need help settling things. My fingers tightened around the phone. Help, I repeated. Yes, just temporary support until she gets back on her feet. I closed my eyes. Back on her feet. A phrase I had heard my entire life, but never once applied to me. I see, I said slowly. My mother relaxed slightly. I knew you'd understand. That sentence. I knew you'd understand. Because understanding was always expected from me, not from them. I stood up and walked toward the window, looking down at the street below, and for the first time I didn't feel included in their world at all. I felt assigned to it, like a role I never agreed to play. Mom, I said quietly. Yes? There was hope in her voice now. Real hope. Because she thought I was still the same version of me. The one who always fixed things. The one who always said yes. The one who always absorbed the damage. But I wasn't that person anymore. I'm not sending any more money, I said. Silence. Immediate. Sharp. Then she laughed nervously. That's not what I asked. Yes, I said. It is. Another pause. Longer this time. And when she spoke again, her tone had changed completely. Hannah, don't start acting difficult. Difficult. There it was again. The label they used whenever I stopped being convenient. I exhaled slowly. I'm not acting anything, I said. I'm just done. And for a moment, there was nothing on the line. No sound, no reaction, just emptiness. Then her voice came back colder. You don't understand what you're doing. I nodded slightly to myself. I think I do. And I hung up. My hands weren't shaking this time. That surprised me. Because I expected guilt. I expected panic. I expected that familiar urge to fix everything immediately. But instead, I felt something else. Stillness. Real stillness. Like I had finally stepped out of a storm I didn't realize I was standing in. For the rest of the afternoon, I didn't receive any calls. No texts, no emails, nothing. And that silence should have felt peaceful. But it didn't. It felt intentional. Like something was being prepared in the background without me. That evening, I got home later than usual. My condo was dark except for the city lights outside. I set my keys down and noticed something immediately. My laptop wasn't where I left it. I stopped. Slowly looked around. My heart didn't race at first. It just dropped. I walked into the living room, and there it was. My laptop. Open. On my coffee table. I didn't leave it like that. I never leave it like that. I approached slowly, and before I even touched it, I saw the screen was still active. An email draft. Not mine. Sent from my account. My breath caught. I clicked closer, and I saw the subject line. Financial agreement confirmation. My stomach turned cold. Because I knew immediately. Someone had been here. While I was at work. Inside my home. And they weren't just looking. They were acting. My phone buzzed on the table. One message. From Claire. We tried to do this the easy way. I stared at it. My pulse slowed. Not because I was calm, but because something inside me had shifted into pure awareness. No emotion, no confusion. Just clarity. They weren't asking anymore. They were moving forward without me. And for the first time, I understood exactly what kind of fight I was actually in. And I knew one thing for certain. From this moment on, nothing would stay hidden for long. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch for hours, staring at my laptop like it was a stranger that had broken into my home wearing my own face. The screen stayed open on that draft email. Financial agreement confirmation. I didn't click anything at first. I just watched it. Because something about it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt placed. Like someone wanted me to find it. At 3:08 a.m., I finally opened it. And the moment I read the first line, my stomach tightened so hard I had to sit forward. It wasn't just an email. It was a request for authorization. A new financial access update, linked to my accounts. My name was already pre-filled, my details already inserted, and at the bottom, a signature field. My signature. I stared at it, longer than I should have, because my first thought wasn't anger. It was disbelief, then fear, then something colder, recognition. This wasn't random. This was structured. Someone knew exactly how my systems worked, exactly how my accounts were set up, exactly how to make it look like I had approved it. I leaned back slowly. My heartbeat finally caught up with my thoughts. And then I said out loud, to an empty room, no. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about identity, control, access, and someone inside my life had access to all of it. The next morning, I went straight to the bank in downtown Seattle. No warning, no calls, just action. The representative at the counter greeted me politely, but when I showed her the email, her expression changed. "Give me a moment," she said quickly. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a private consultation room. A different tone now, more serious, more careful. The manager placed a folder in front of me. "Miss Brooks," she said, "we've flagged unusual access patterns on your accounts." I swallowed. "So it's not just me seeing this?" She shook her head. "No. There have been multiple login attempts using verified credentials." My voice dropped. "Verified how?" She hesitated, then said the words I wasn't ready for. "Some of them match your authentication history." I blinked. "That's impossible." She nodded slightly. "That's what concerned us." A pause. Then she added, "And there's something else." My chest tightened. "What else?" She slid another document across the table. "This authorization was submitted from a device registered under your home IP address." My home. My apartment. I felt my body go still. Not panic. Not shock. Just stillness. Because now it was real. Someone hadn't just accessed my accounts. They had accessed my life, my personal space, my digital identity, and they were close enough to do it from inside my home network. I whispered, "Is this legal?" The manager chose her words carefully. "We are investigating that now." I stood up slowly. My legs felt heavy, not weak, heavy, like reality itself was becoming denser around me. Before leaving, I asked one last question. "Can you tell me when this started?" She checked her screen, then said, "Approximately 6 weeks ago." 6 weeks. My mind immediately ran backward. 6 weeks ago. That was around the time my parents first agreed to come visit me. That was when Claire started texting more frequently. That was when everything shifted from emotional pressure to coordinated requests. I left the bank without saying much else. Outside, the air felt colder than it should have. I walked to my car slowly, and as I sat in the driver's seat, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just family dysfunction. This was organized manipulation, and I had walked into it willingly for years. My phone buzzed. Claire again. Of course. But this time I didn't open it immediately. I just stared at her name. And I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. Fear doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives as clarity. I finally opened the message. "We need to fix this before Mom and Dad get involved further." Further. That word hit differently now, because it implied they were already involved, and not just emotionally, practically, strategically. I typed slowly. "What exactly are you doing?" Her response came almost instantly. "You wouldn't understand." That again. Always the same line. You wouldn't understand. As if understanding required permission. As if I had never been part of the system they were now using against me. I locked my phone and drove home. But halfway there, something happened that made me pull over. My mother was calling. This time I answered immediately. Her voice was different. Not soft. Not emotional. Controlled. "Hannah," she said. "We need to meet." I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "About what?" A pause. Then, "About the documents Claire sent you." My breath slowed. So it wasn't just me. She had sent them too. Or shown them. Or used them. I asked quietly, "What documents?" Another pause. Then my mother said something that made my entire body go cold. "The ones you signed." Silence. I looked straight ahead at the road. Cars moving. People living normal lives. And my life. Splitting into something unrecognizable. "I didn't sign anything," I said slowly. My mother sighed. "Hannah, please don't make this harder than it already is." That sentence again. Don't make it harder. As if I was the problem. As if I was the disruption in something they had already completed without me. I whispered, "You're saying I agreed to something I never saw?" Another pause, and then she said it. Calmly. Carefully. Like it had already been decided long before I was included in the conversation. "It was for the family arrangement. We needed your approval at the time." At the time. I laughed once. A short, empty sound. "What time, Mom?" Silence. Then, "When we needed stability." That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just justification. And in that moment, I understood the full shape of it. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't chaos. This was a structure built without me, using me as its foundation. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them again, my voice was steady. "Meet me." A pause. "Yes," she said quickly. "We'll explain everything." But I already knew something she didn't. There are moments in life when explanations don't matter anymore. Only consequences do. And as I ended the call, I realized I wasn't going to that meeting to understand them. I was going to see how far they were willing to go to keep the truth buried. And for the first time, I was ready to find out what happens when the person they've been using finally stops playing along. I arrived 10 minutes early, not because I was nervous, but because I needed to see them before they saw me. The cafe my mother chose was one of those quiet, polished places downtown. Glass walls, soft music, people pretending their lives were calm and organized. Everything I wasn't feeling inside. I sat near the window, watched reflections in the glass instead of looking directly at the door. And I waited. My hands were steady now. That surprised me. A few weeks ago, I would have been rehearsing what to say, apologizing in my head, trying to keep the peace before anything even happened. But not today. Today, I was done preparing for other people's reactions. At 10:14 a.m., my mother walked in first, my father behind her. And Claire? Of course, Claire arrived last. Like always. Like the center of gravity. She spotted me immediately and smiled. That same easy smile. Like nothing in my life had been quietly collapsing around her decisions. "Hey," she said softly, sitting down. My mother reached for my hand instantly. "Thank you for coming, sweetheart." Sweetheart. That word used to soften me. Now it just felt like strategy. My father didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me. Not angry. Not warm. Measuring. Like I was a problem they were trying to resolve. I leaned back slightly. "So," I said. "Explain." A pause. Then my mother exhaled. "We don't want this to become bigger than it already is." Claire nodded quickly. "Yeah, it's getting kind of out of control." I almost laughed. out of control, like I wasn't sitting in the middle of something carefully built over years. I looked at her. You mean the accounts? The documents? The access from my home? Her smile tightened. You're exaggerating again. That word again. Exaggerating. Every time truth becomes inconvenient, it becomes exaggeration. My father finally spoke. Hannah, we're trying to handle a situation that you're making emotional. That sentence landed heavier than the others, because it wasn't denial, it was dismissal. I folded my hands on the table. Then explain the signature on my name. Silence. A long one. My mother glanced at Claire. Claire sighed, and then she pulled out her phone, turned it toward me. My lawyer handled it, she said casually. I blinked. Your lawyer? She nodded. Relax, it's standard family authorization stuff. Family authorization. Those words again. Like they were a legal shield for anything they wanted. I leaned forward slightly. I never gave permission. Claire shrugged. You kind of did. That sentence made my chest tighten. What does that mean? She looked at me like I was slow. You signed years ago, when Dad was organizing the family financial structure. You probably forgot. Forgot. As if something that important could be forgotten. My father cleared his throat. We all signed similar agreements at the time. I turned to him. All of us? He hesitated. Just slightly. But I noticed. Claire jumped in quickly. It's not a big deal. It just allowed temporary adjustments for emergencies. I stared at her. Temporary, I repeated. She nodded. Yes. How long is temporary in this family, Claire? Her expression changed slightly. Annoyed now. You're really stuck on wording. I leaned back, because suddenly I realized something important. They weren't afraid of being wrong. They were afraid of being questioned. That's different. My mother reached out gently. Hannah, we can fix this. We just need you to cooperate. Cooperate. That word again. Like I was part of a system designed for obedience. I looked at her. I've been cooperating my entire life. A pause. Then I added quietly, and I don't see what it got me. The table went still. Even Claire stopped smiling. For the first time, the energy shifted. My father leaned forward. Hannah, you're being unfair. I nodded slowly. Maybe. Then I looked directly at him. But I think you already decided that a long time ago. Silence. And this time, it wasn't comfortable silence. It was exposed silence. The kind that comes when truth is finally said out loud in a room that depends on it staying buried. Claire broke it first. This is ridiculous. We came here to solve a problem, not relive childhood trauma. That sentence hit something deeper, because that's exactly what it was to her. A problem. Not a person. Not a sister. A problem. I looked at her quietly. You stole from me, I said. Her eyes narrowed. I didn't steal anything. My voice stayed calm. You used my identity. Her laugh was short. God, you're dramatic. And that was it. That moment. Something inside me finally clicked into place. Not anger. Not sadness. Clarity. Because I understood something I hadn't fully understood before. They weren't going to admit anything. Not because they couldn't, but because they didn't believe they had to. My father sighed heavily. This is why we didn't want to tell you everything at once. I looked at him. Tell me what? A pause. Then he said it. And everything changed. There's a loan involved. I blinked. What loan? Claire shifted in her seat. My mother spoke carefully. It was taken under the family arrangement. My chest tightened. What loan? I repeated. My father finally looked me in the eyes. A significant one. Silence. And then he added the part that made the air disappear from the room. Backed by your financial profile. I stared at him, slowly. What did you just say? Claire exhaled sharply. It was temporary leverage, she said quickly. We needed it for investment recovery. My voice dropped. You used my identity for a loan. My father nodded slightly. As collateral. The world didn't go blurry. It went sharp. Every detail suddenly too clear. The cup on the table. The sound of music in the cafe. The way my mother wouldn't meet my eyes. I stood up slowly. So let me understand this, I said quietly. You used my accounts, my signature, my identity. I looked at Claire. And now there's debt tied to me. No one answered immediately, because there was nothing left to say. And in that silence, I realized something irreversible. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was legal exposure. And whether they admitted it or not, they had just tied my name to something that could destroy everything. I grabbed my bag. And for the first time since this started, I didn't feel like the daughter in the story anymore. I felt like the only person in the room who understood what was actually happening. And as I walked out of that cafe, I knew one thing for certain. The next move wouldn't be emotional. It would be final. I didn't go home after the cafe. I couldn't. Because the moment I stepped outside, the air felt different. Like everything I believed about my life had quietly shifted into something unstable. I just kept walking. Past buildings. Past traffic. Past people who had no idea a stranger's entire world was collapsing 1 block away. And the worst part? No one looked at me like I was breaking. I ended up sitting on a bench near the waterfront. Seattle's water was calm that day. Too calm. It felt wrong that the world could look so normal while my name was suddenly tied to something I never agreed to. A loan. Collateral. My identity. I kept replaying the cafe conversation over and over. My father's voice. Backed by your financial profile. Claire's tone. It was temporary leverage. Temporary. That word again. It was starting to feel like a lie they used to make permanent things sound harmless. My phone buzzed. I already knew who it was before I looked. Claire. I almost didn't open it, but I did. We need to talk privately, not with Mom and Dad. I stared at the message. Privately. That was new. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something about the way she phrased it felt different. Not confident, not dismissive. Careful. After a few seconds, I replied, Say what you need to say. 3 dots appeared instantly, then stopped, then started again. Finally. It's not what they told you. I frowned. That line. That exact line. That's what people say when they want you to doubt everything at once. I typed back. Then explain it. No response. Not immediately. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then 20. And just when I was about to put my phone away, she called. I hesitated before answering. Talk, I said. Her voice wasn't the same this time. No casual tone. No sarcasm. Just lower. Controlled. You're not going to like what I'm about to say. I leaned back slightly. I already don't like anything happening right now. A small breath from her side. Then she said it. This wasn't my idea. Silence. I didn't respond. Because I already knew where this was going. She continued quickly. Mom and Dad handled most of it. I just signed where they told me to. My grip tightened. You signed something in my name? No, she said immediately. Not your name, but paperwork connected to you. I closed my eyes. That sounded worse. Connected how? Another pause. Then her voice dropped. The loan wasn't for me. That stopped me. I opened my eyes slowly. What do you mean? She hesitated. Then finally, it was to cover something they didn't want you to find out about. My chest tightened. Claire, what are you talking about? A long silence. Then she said, Dad's business debt. That sentence hit differently. Not because it was shocking, but because it didn't fit the story I had been told my entire life. My father was retired, stable, careful, responsible. Debt wasn't supposed to exist in that version of him. I stood up slowly. What debt? Claire's voice cracked slightly. Before he retired, there were losses, investments, things he never recovered from. I felt my stomach tighten. And they used me for that, I said quietly. Another pause. Then she whispered, They used all of us. That was the first time she sounded uncertain, not defensive, not dismissive, uncertain. I sat back down. Because suddenly the ground under everything shifted again. My mother's constant urgency, Claire's financial emergencies, the hidden transfers, the temporary arrangements. It wasn't random anymore. It was a system built to cover something larger. I spoke slowly. So let me get this straight. My voice was steady now. Dad had debt. Yes. And instead of telling me, they tried to restructure it through your credit profile, she said quickly. I closed my eyes. Because now it made sense. Too much sense. All those years of me being responsible. All those times I was asked to help set up accounts. All those documents I never fully read. All those moments I trusted them. It wasn't trust. It was access. I exhaled slowly. And you, I said. What? You still went along with it. Silence. Then her voice softened. I didn't understand the full picture at first. I almost laughed. At first? Another pause. Then she said something quieter. I thought they were protecting the family. That word again. Family. Always used to blur accountability. I stood up again. And this time, I felt something new. Not confusion. Not heartbreak. Recognition. Because I finally saw the shape of it clearly. This wasn't just favoritism. This wasn't just emotional neglect. This was financial dependency disguised as family structure. And I was the only one who hadn't known my role in it. My phone stayed silent for a few seconds. Then Claire added, You're not the only one affected. That line made me stop. What does that mean? Her voice lowered again. If this collapses, it won't just hit you. I frowned. Explain. But she didn't. Instead, she said something that made my skin go cold. They're meeting tomorrow, with someone legal. A pause. And you're expected to agree. I laughed once. Cold. Sharp. I'm expected to agree? Yes. Silence. I looked out at the water again. The calm surface didn't match anything happening inside my life. And for the first time, I realized something important. They weren't trying to explain. They were trying to finalize. I spoke quietly. Claire. Yeah? I'm not agreeing to anything. A pause. Then her voice turned tense. You don't understand what happens if you don't. I nodded slightly to myself. For once, she was right about one thing. I didn't understand. Not fully. But I was about to. And when I did, there would be no more versions of this story where I stayed silent. I ended the call. And I didn't feel panic. I didn't feel fear. I felt something colder. Prepared. Because now I knew tomorrow wasn't a conversation. It was a confrontation. And for the first time since this began, I was no longer walking into it blind. I didn't sleep at all before the meeting, not because I was scared, but because my mind finally refused to go backward. No more replaying old memories. No more searching for signs I missed. No more trying to understand why I wasn't chosen. At some point during the night, I realized something simple. Understanding them wasn't the solution anymore. Exposure was. The meeting was set for 10 a.m., a private office downtown, legal advisors present. My parents insisted it was just to clear everything properly. Claire called it closure, but I knew better now. Nothing about this was closure. It was control. When I walked into the building, I noticed something immediately. My parents were already there, so was Claire, and two unfamiliar people in suits sat at the table, lawyers. Everything about the room felt too organized, too prepared, like a story already written before I entered it. My father stood first. "Hannah," he said, almost gently. My mother followed. "We're glad you came." Claire didn't stand. She just watched me. Careful. Measuring. I sat down slowly, and for the first time in my life, I didn't try to smile. The main lawyer cleared his throat. "Let's begin." He slid a folder toward me. My name was on the cover. I opened it. And everything inside felt like another version of my life I never agreed to. Loans, authorizations, transfers, debt restructuring tied to my identity. My stomach stayed calm. Too calm. Because I already knew this was coming. The lawyer continued. "This agreement ensures shared responsibility across all involved parties." I looked up. "All involved parties?" I repeated. He nodded. My father leaned forward. "Hannah, this is the simplest way to protect everyone." Protect everyone. That word again. I turned a page slowly. "And what happens if I don't sign?" Silence. Not from the lawyer. From my family. That was answer enough. Claire finally spoke. "Don't make this dramatic." I looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't feel anything when I saw her. No anger. No sadness. Just distance. "Dramatic," I repeated softly. She sighed. "You're acting like we did this to hurt you." I closed the folder. That sound was louder than I expected. "I don't care what you intended," I said calmly. My mother shifted slightly. "Hannah, please." But I raised my hand. Not aggressively, just enough to stop her. And she did. That surprised me, because I had never stopped her before. I looked around the table, at all of them, at the people who had built a system where I only mattered when something needed fixing. And I finally spoke clearly. "You used my identity, my accounts, my financial history." A pause. "And now you want me to sign so I take responsibility for it." My father exhaled. "It's not that simple." I nodded. "You're right." Then I leaned forward slightly. "It's simpler." Silence again. The lawyer looked uncomfortable now. Claire shifted in her seat. My mother's voice softened. "We're still family." That sentence almost made me laugh. Almost. Instead, I said, "Family doesn't do this." No one responded. Because there was nothing left to defend. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped slightly against the floor. Everyone watched me, waiting. For me to break. For me to panic. For me to go back to being manageable. But I didn't. I picked up the folder and placed it back on the table. Carefully. Deliberately. Then I said, "I'm not signing anything." The room froze. My father's voice hardened. "Hannah, think carefully." I looked at him. "I have." Claire leaned forward. "You'll destroy everything." That word again. Destroy. Funny how they only used it when I stopped participating. I turned toward her. "No," I said quietly. "I'm just not saving it anymore." Silence. The lawyer finally spoke. Miss Brooks, if you refuse, this becomes a legal escalation. I nodded. Good. That surprised him, even more than them. My mother whispered, You don't understand what you're doing. I looked at her one last time, and I finally said what I had been holding in for years. I understand enough. Then I walked out. No hesitation. No looking back. No final words. Just footsteps down a hallway that suddenly felt lighter with every step. Behind me, I could hear voices rising. Confusion. Panic. Arguments beginning. But I didn't stop. Because something had already changed. They brought me into a system I never agreed to. And for the first time, I stepped out of it completely. Number 10. The silence after the storm. 3 days passed. No calls, no messages, no legal threats, nothing. At first, the silence felt unreal, like waiting for a wave that never arrives. But slowly, it turned into something else. Peace. Not the kind that feels happy, the kind that feels empty at first, then slowly becomes stable. On the 4th day, I got an email from a legal firm. Not my family. Independent counsel. A response to everything I had reported quietly after the meeting. As I read it, my breathing slowed. Investigations had started. Documents were being reviewed. Transactions were being traced. Signatures were being verified. And the word that stood out most, fraudulent activity under identity misuse review. I closed my laptop, and for the first time, I felt something close to relief. Not revenge, not satisfaction, just truth starting to surface on its own. That evening, I went for a walk near the water again. Same place, different person. And I realized something I hadn't understood before. Revenge wasn't what I wanted. I never wanted to destroy them. I just wanted to stop disappearing inside their decisions. My phone buzzed one last time that night. A message from Claire. No apology, no anger, just one line. You didn't have to go this far. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back. I didn't go far. I paused, then added. I finally stopped staying where I was never seen. And I turned my phone off. For good. Not because everything was perfect, but because for the first time in my life, I didn't need them to understand me anymore. And that was the real ending. Not revenge, not destruction, just finally being free from a story I never agreed to live in.